There is no sacrifice too great if it brings an end to the Burning Legion. Illidan Stormrage. The first of the demon hunters, former self-declared Lord of Outland, former head of the Black Temple, and founding member of the Illidari, is Illidan Stormrage, also known as the Betrayer. He was in love with Tyrande Whisperwind like his identical twin brother Malfurion Stormrage. Illidan was formerly a formidable Night Elf sorcerer who, during the War of the Ancients, publicly betrayed his race by joining the evil Burning Legion. Even if his motivations were honorable, as he secretly wanted to stop the Legion's invasion. He ultimately joined his fellow Night Elves again, but after the conflict his people labeled him a betrayer and imprisoned him in the Barrow Deeps beneath Mount Hyjal. This was due to his development of a second Well of Eternity. He stayed there for more than 10,000 years under the Warden Mayev's Shadow Song's watchful eye and that of her watchers. Tyrande released Illidan from his imprisonment to fight the demons once more when the Legion retook Azeroth during the Third War. Then, in order to kill the Dreadlord Tychondrius, he ingested the fell energies of the Skull of Gul'dan and changed into a demon, for which Malfurion exiled him. Illidan made the decision to pretend to be loyal to the Demon Lord Kil'jaeden by promising to kill Kil'jaeden's treacherous creation, the Lich King, in order to learn more about his real enemy, the Burning Legion, after the Legion was defeated at the conclusion of the war. Illidan gathered an army of Naga soldiers under the command of Lady Vashj, but the Night Elves foiled his plans, forcing him to escape to the disintegrated kingdom of Outland. There, he and his Naga found his new friends in the Blood Elves under the command of Kael'thas Sunstrider and the Shattered Draenei under the command of Akama. With their assistance, he deposed the oppressive monarch of Outland, Mechtheridon, in order to take control of the Broken Realm for himself. Later, Illidan made a last-ditch effort to finish Kil'jaeden's task by traveling with his companions to the Lich King's fortress of Icecrown, but he was ultimately foiled and almost murdered by the Lich King's champion, the Death Knight Arthas Menethil. Illidan left Kil'jaeden behind as he returned to Outland and gathered his army, the Illidari, to start his real conflict with the Burning Legion. In order to destroy the Legion world of Argus, he raised an army of elf demon hunters in his image and started making plans, but his harsh tactics and unwavering dedication to his objective alienated his friends Kael'thas and Akama. Through Kil'jaeden's machinations, the Alliance and Horde invaded Outland and started destroying Illidan's armies because they were thought to be no different from the monsters he claimed to be fighting. The Betrayer was finally cornered and killed inside his own sanctum by Akama, a party of Azerothian explorers, and its furious former prisoner, Maiev. Despite his success in destroying the demon stronghold of Nethreza, Maiev then carried Illidan's body to the Vault of Wardens, where his spirit may continue to endure the remainder of his everlasting punishment. Years passed before the Legion made another incursion there. Illidan was resurrected atop the Nighthold after a battle for his soul broke out between the Legion and the troops of Azeroth, including the lost Illidari. The Betrayer then joined forces with Azeroth's Guardians as they fought the Legion inside the Tomb of Sargeras and across the Broken Shore. The Sargerite Keystone is a relic that Illidan used to open a rift connecting the realms of Argus and Azeroth during a battle with Kil'jaeden in the Twisting Nether. The Army of the Light, commanded by the Prime Naru Zera, thought Illidan was the Chosen One. A hero of the light prophesied to put an end to the era of demons and followed Azeroth's heroes as they went to Argus to fight the Legion. When the Naru attempted to compel Zera to be imbued with the light, Illidan rejected the thought of having his future predetermined for him and murdered her. After attacking Sargeras' base of operations at Taurus, the Army of the Light and their allies liberated the prisoner spirits of the Titan Pantheon, who had imprisoned Sargeras at the seat of the Pantheon because of his sins. The other heroes of Azeroth went back to their homeworlds, but Illidan stayed behind and became Sargeras' prisoner. Illidan was first introduced as a minor character in Warcraft 3 Reign of Chaos, but he went on to play a much bigger part as one of the two primary villains in the game's sequel, The Frozen Throne, with Kil'jaeden. As the last boss of the Black Temple raid, in patch 2.1, he originally appeared in World of Warcraft's first expansion, The Burning Crusade, as a significant enemy. Along with his Illidari, Illidan made a comeback as an anti-hero in World of Warcraft Legion. He joined the Azeroth heroes in their fight against the Legion as a key player. Now let's begin his in-depth tale. Malfurion, Illidan's twin brother, and Illidan were raised in Suramar as Tyrande Whisperwind's friends. They were born in Val'sharah and Lorethil. Years before the upcoming War of the Ancients, Illidan and Malfurion's parents passed away. Chapter 1 War of the Ancients. Illidan used magic of the Highborn. As his brother had done in his youth, he made an effort to control the druidic powers, but the sorcery spoke to him in a way that the magic of the land did not. Illidan, unlike his brother, was born with amber eyes, which were formerly thought to be a sign of great destiny, but instead denoted innate druidic aptitude. Illidan was still looking for his destiny while Malfurion and Tyrande had found it. Despite not being a highborn himself, he was appointed as Kurtulah's Ravencrest's personal caster. Malfurion persuaded Illidan to forsake his queen once Archimonde's invasion of Azeroth had started and Azshara's treason had come to light. Illidan went after his sibling. Malfurion realized their opponents were too strong to be defeated in battle when Cenarius and the dragons entered the fray. He devised a plan to demolish the Well of Eternity in order to stop the invasion. Illidan found the concept revolting. The well was the source of his power, as well as perhaps the elf's immortality. Thus, its loss was a cost that he could not bear. The Night Elf also discovered that he grew to appreciate the Burning Legion's abilities as he saw a mystical purity behind their disorderly actions. The numbers of the Burning Legion did not appear to permanently decline, in contrast to how difficult it was for the Night Elves to hold their position. The Tosias passed away, and Illidan took over as the Moonguard's commander. Illidan did not, however, make the most of the Moonguard. He instructed them to channel their strength into him rather than casting spells or enhancing his own. However, by doing this, he left them defenseless to the demon's attacks. Illidan came to the realization that sacrifice was required to defeat the Burning Legion after one specific fight defending Blackrook Hold, in which he exhausted his own warriors to the point that many passed away. He also recognized that the rest were idiots for failing to see it. Tyrande Whisperwind was a novice priest in the Sisters of Elune, and Illidan had deep affections for her. Illidan frequently made snap decisions out of a desire to impress Tyrande, especially while using magic. He was unaware that the priestess wasn't exactly seeking for these kinds of actions in a partner. While Illidan battled to earn her affection, none of them recognized that the conflict had already ended since Tyrande had almost immediately sided with Malfurion. Knowing this, Xavius used his influence to cloud Illidan's judgment and persuade him that if Malfurion passed away, Illidan would no longer have competition for Tyrande's affection. His final connection to the Defenders was severed when he saw Tyrande in his brother's arms. The Warglaives of Azeroth were acquired by Illidan after he vanquished the Doomguard leader Azeroth and seized possession of the demon's personal weapons at some point during this period. Kurtalis' daughter Ilisana, who was saddened over her father's passing and believed Illidan's path was the correct one, departed to go find him and follow in his footsteps after he left. Illidan set off towards Sinajari with a fresh strategy in his head. He pretended to be loyal to Azshara and Mannoroth there. The Demon Soul, an artifact of enormous power made by Deathwing, also known as Neltharion the Earth Warder, and capable of closing the gateway, letting the demons to enter Kalimdor, was the object Illidan intended to acquire. Illidan needed to acquire additional strength though, in order to carry out his strategy. Sargeras finally hauled Illidan before him, and the Night Elf's scheme to capture the Demon Soul for the Legion was immediately made known to Sargeras. This strategy delighted Sargeras, who in return for Illidan's loyalty offered him a present. Despite being outside the portal, Sargeras personally burned out Illidan's eyes, replacing them with orbs of mystic fire that gave him the ability to see all types of magic. He also tattooed fell symbols all over his body. When Illidan's eyes were destroyed, he also saw the Legion's true might and their crusade beyond limitless worlds, and he realized that fighting them on Azeroth would be pointless. He made the decision to finally beat them at that point. While Captain Varathan was sent to join Illidan in his hunt for the Demon Soul, Azshara was intrigued by the new Illidan, who was suspicious of her advances. The Legion set to work utilizing the Demon Soul as a focus to fortify their gateway above the Well of Eternity for Sargeras as soon as it was in their possession. Illidan reconnected with the Kaldorei resistance, who now held him in lower guard after he appeared to betray them and give them the Demon Victory Key. However, the brothers collaborated with Malfurion to use the power of the Demon Soul to shut the gateway. As the Well of Eternity grew unstable as a result of the portal's collapse, Sinajari's Illidan filled many vials with water from the Well of Eternity just before the defenders withdrew. The main supercontinent of Kalimdor was divided into several smaller continents as a result of the Great Sundering, which was caused by the instability of the well. Illidan reached Mount Hygel's summits after the Great Sundering and discovered the little serene pool there. 3 of the vial's contents were emptied into the nearby waterways. The water was swiftly polluted and bent into a new Well of Eternity by the chaotic energies that quickly materialized. Illidan's happiness was short-lived though, as the rest of the Kaldorei leadership, including his brother, Tyrande, Malfurion and the others, found him and were appalled with what he had done. Malfurion, unable to comprehend his brother's duplicity, made another attempt to convince Illidan of the error of his actions. He He claimed that because magic is chaotic by nature, it can only cause devastation while it is there. Illidan was uninterested in what his brother had to say since he was so mesmerized by the magic's potency. Illidan asserted that if the Burning Legion ever reappeared, magic would be necessary. Malfurion was infuriated with his brother because he realized that Illidan was eternally lost to the influence of magic. Malfurion was shaken by his brother's lack of regret. He gave the order for him to be detained in a cell hidden from sight and thought well below Hyjal. Malfurion would later recall that he occasionally visited Illidan in jail in an effort to divert him from his disastrous course. Chapter 2. Being let out of jail. Illidan toiled in a dark jail for 10,000 years. The betrayer was always on their watch by Califax, a custodian of the grove, and a group of night elves, including Maya of Shadowsong. Tyrande, who killed the night elf's guard in hopes of utilizing Illidan against the Legion, which had returned to Azeroth as a result of the Scourge, brought about the unexpected release. Illidan decided to aid since his love for Tyrande had not diminished during the millennia of being imprisoned. He vowed to expel the Legion and permanently leave the Night Elves. Illidan attacked Hyjal's war-torn woodlands after being freed. Malfurion disagreed with Tyrande's choice, considering Illidan released to be a grave error. Illidan left Malfurion behind and led a force of Night Elves into Fellwood to hunt down the Legion. Frustrated that his brother had not changed and eager to show him that the demons had no power over him, he met Arthas, the Lich King's champion, in Fellwood, and they got into a fight. The battle came to a standstill because the fighters were evenly matched. When Illidan demanded to know why Arthas had been following him, the combat was interrupted. In a frank response, Arthas informed Illidan of the Skull of Gul'dan, the demonic relic responsible for Fellwood's corruption. He said that the corruption of the woodlands would stop if the item were destroyed. Arthas described the power of the skull in great detail and added that his master was aware of Illidan's desire for power to make sure that Illidan would fall for the bait. Illidan looked for the skull and its power even if he didn't trust Arthas. The skull was guarded by a massive demon gate and Illidan and his troops had to struggle tremendously to get close to the item. He broke the demonic seal and channeled the skull's abilities for his own purpose. Motivated by need and inspired by the hope that, with the added power, he could, at long last, atone for his sins in Tyrande's eyes. He found strength, but danger that was greater than power struck him right away. He paid a high price in the struggle for possession of the skull, and the artifact's abilities altered him. Illidan encased himself in a shadow after transforming into a demon and completely decimated Tychondrius and his army. But destruction followed victory. Malfurion and Tyrande looked aside in disgust as they felt the evil force residing within Illidan. Malfurion reprimanded his brother because he believed that Illidan had sold his soul to gain more power. Malfurion exiled his brother from the woodlands because he was furious. Illidan left the Night Elf realms after muttering, "So be it, brother," since he felt his sacrifice and labor were not acknowledged. Chapter 3. Loyalties. Kil'jaeden contacted Illidan after the Legion was vanquished, and while acknowledging Illidan's questionable history with them, he was given one more opportunity to work for them. He instructed him to locate and demolish the Frozen Throne. In exchange for more power and magic than he could ever imagine, Illidan was to remove Ner'zhul from the equation since he had become too powerful for Kil'jaeden to govern and had betrayed him. In order to help him in this endeavor, he gave him the Orb of Kil'jaeden. Illidan gained access to Gul'dan's memories through the Charmed Skull, and a plan began to form, but he would need allies to assist him. He made the decision to ask some old pals for help. Only whispers about the demise of the Highborn had reached Illidan. With the use of a potent spell, Illidan summoned the Naga to the surface and brought some previous Highborn obligations with him. From the depths, a gang of Naga commanded by Lady Vashj surfaced and swore allegiance to him. They did not appreciate his demonic strength, nor did they come because of their common past. The old gods commanded them to come. They observed Illidan's thirst for power. To start a new conflict, they dispatched the Naga to help Illidan in his fight against the Lich King. The old gods just had to tell the Naga to remove the fell-corrupted heart of their former Night Elf if he started to cause problems. Vashj thus arrived to guide those who would be referred as Illidan's Naga. But Maya of Shadowsong, the problematic warden, was still a problem for Illidan because she had pursued him relentlessly throughout Kalimdor. Then Illidan corrupted several furbolgs while working with a group of satyrs known as Illidan's servitors. Then, with his Naga and satyr minions guarding the route behind him, he hurried to the port of Nendis. Maya slew the furbolgs and routed his army, but when she approached the harbor, Illidan boarded a ship and sailed away, leaving a group of Naga behind to sink the ships and dash any prospects of pursuing him. The Broken Isles, where the tomb of Sargeras is located, are the abandoned ruins of Suramar, which ironically is the city where Illidan was reared. Gul'dan and his warlocks had raised to Ramar 20 years before. Chapter 4: Conflict on the Broken Isles. However, Illidan's aides had not been able to sink the boats. Shortly after Illidan arrived on the Broken Isles, Maiev and the Watchers followed suit, and the two armies engaged in combat on the swampy terrain. When Illidan arrived to the grave, Maiev moved quickly to follow. Illidan rapidly moved through the tomb with the aid of Gul'dan's expertise, arriving at the room containing the Eye of Sargeras. Infuriated by Maiev for imprisoning him for 10,000 years, Illidan used the eye to bring the tomb down over her when she approached while he and Vashj were activating the potent relic. He then fled through the Naga's underwater tunnels. Naisha and the other Watchers in the tomb were all slaughtered by Maiev, but she managed to escape thanks to her power. The Warden dispatched a runner to fetch troops from Ashenvale as Illidan and Maiev fought for it out of control on the surface. As Maiev's base was being overwhelmed, Malfurion and Tyrande arrived on the Broken Isles with reinforcements. Illidan's men were decimated when they retaliated, but he and his retainers escaped without suffering any significant injuries. In order to protect himself, Illidan entangled Tyrande as she chased after them outside the base before admonishing her not to intervene. He escaped once more over the ocean. Tyrande ultimately admitted during this battle the reason she had rejected Illidan. He had become so overcome with his growing magical and political power that he had lost his own inner fortitude. Malfurion maintained his internal strength while gaining power. With this information in hand, Illidan was able to confront his emotions. Illidan arrived on Lordaeron's coast and immediately made his way to Dalaran, where he started to utilize the Eye of Sargeras to disintegrate the polar ice cap and destroy Icecrown and the Frozen Throne. The spell, however, failed because Maiev and Malfurion interrupted him. Malfurion came to the conclusion that Illidan posed a threat to the world and needed to be stopped after seeing his spell rip the landscape apart. As Malfurion was defeating the Lich King, their shared foe, Illidan, who was ensnared by his brother, labeled him as stupid. Malfurion was enraged with him for being responsible for Tyrande's death, which Maiev claimed had occurred. Prince Kel'Thas, the Night Elf's newest friend, questioned whether it was appropriate for Illidan to assume that the lady he loved had passed away. Illidan was devastated by her death. Instead of being ripped apart by the undead as Maiev had claimed to Malfurion, Tyrande had fallen into a river and was carried away by the currents, according to Kel'Thas. The Warden was swiftly taken into custody by Malfurion, who then went in search of Tyrande. Illidan pleaded for permission to assist his brother in finding the cherished priestess. Tyrande was under intense attack from a sizable undead force when Illidan and his Naga personal guard arrived. To get to her, Illidan and his Naga had to fight their way through the dead. Tyrande was surprised by Illidan's assistance to her and shocked when he delivered her to Malfurion safely. Illidan was assured by Malfurion that he might leave provided he never threatened the Night Elves again. Illidan concurred, hoping that the argument with his brother would cease. Chapter 5: Getaway to Outland. Illidan exploited the little gap left over from the gateway Kel'Thuzad had used to call Archimonde into Azeroth to establish a portal to Outland after Malfurion had let him go. He instantly took off, with Maiev hot on his heels. Illidan wished to find a planet where he could live in peace since he knew that Kil'jaeden's fury would not spare him now that he had failed to destroy Ner'zhul. Outland, the wrecked remnants of Draenor, seemed to him to be just such a location. Illidan was pursued across the destroyed globe until Maiev and the Watchers managed to seize him and put him back in jail. However, Kel'Thas' son Strider and Vashj intervened to save him. In exchange for Kael's oath of fealty to Illidan, the latter swore to find the means to satisfy his people's magic addiction. Kael was appointed as Illidan's deputy once the Blood Elf Alliance was accepted. The Naga and the Cinderai would be extremely helpful to his objectives. Illidan continued to pursue his initial goal of purging Outland of all demonic influence in order to escape Kil'jaeden's hold. To do this, they besieged the Black Temple of Magteridon, the pit ruler who had seized global dominance. But first, in order to stop the influx of reinforcements, Illidan methodically closed his spatial portals. They eventually were successful. When they arrived at the Black Temple, Arkama of the Broken addressed Illidan and vowed his race's loyalty for helping them in their struggle against the fell orcs of Magteridon, who had besieged their hamlet with the intention of annihilating them all. Arkama's people felt grateful to Illidan and his army. After taking down Magteridon's fortifications and laying siege to the Black Temple, they engaged the Pit Lord in combat and won. Magteridon remarked sarcastically on Illidan's considerable might and inquired as to if the Legion had sent him as a test. Magteridon was imprisoned under Hellfire Citadel and held trapped in place by the fell orc jailer Caledon, the Breaker. Illidan chuckled, joking that it was not a test but a replacement. Chapter 6. The March on Icecrown. A torrent of fire and smoke fell upon the Black Temple, and Kil'jaeden emerged in all his evil grandeur as Illidan rallied the Outland soldiers under a new banner. Illidan soon asserted that he had been assembling his soldiers for a second assault on the Frozen Throne after chastising him for his foolish attempts to escape his wrath. Kil'jaeden decided to give Illidan one more chance to placate the demons after seeing that his new allies showed some promise. Kil'jaeden was unaware that Illidan had betrayed the Legion by seizing the Black Temple. Demons were cunning beings with a reputation for betraying one another in order to gain advantage. Kil'jaeden believed that Illidan was his servant and that he had claimed Outland as a prize that Kil'jaeden would give to Illidan if he killed the Lich King. Kil'jaeden would let Illidan keep Outland. Kil'jaeden vowed to use all of his resources to recover the destroyed planet from Illidan and kill him if Illidan refused. Illidan once more pretended to have ideas and loyalty before Kil'jaeden and consented to kill the Lich King. He created a new entranceway back to Azeroth by using one of his several portals in Outland. He travelled to Northrend with a section of his army and left Akama to protect Outland. He then started moving against Icecrown's citadel. Illidan, Vashj and Kael engaged Anubarak's soldiers as they made their way through the snow to the Icecrown glacier while sieging Northrend. However, Ner'zhul summoned Arthas to Northrend to carry out the strategy he had started months before he knew he would be overrun if he did nothing. As Arthas and Anubarak dug their way out of Azul Nerub, Illidan's troops finally arrived at Icecrown, and the two groups engaged in a massive struggle as they attempted to conquer the 4 mystical obelisks around the ice. After a protracted conflict in which control alternated between the two adversaries, Arthas turned on all obelisks and the door to the Frozen Throne opened. Illidan, however, was not yet done. At the foot of the glacier, the two warriors met and fought one-on-one. But after a few minutes of trading blows, Arthas broke through Illidan's barriers and killed him. Illidan, who was severely hurt, collapsed in the snow. Before leaving, Arthas urged Illidan to leave Azeroth and never come back rather than killing him. Vashj and Kael withdrew, ultimately returning to Outland, taking Illidan with them, after realizing that they could not destroy the Frozen Throne. It should be noted that a film cinematic was initially intended to replace the in-game animation between Illidan and Arthas. However, due to time limits, the sequence had to be completed within the game. The change's worst mistake, according to the creators, is that many people believed Illidan had perished, despite the fact that the film would have shown that Illidan had really survived to see Arthas' metamorphosis. Chapter 7. The Lord of Outland. Illidan retreated from Arthas to the broken ruins of Draenor after their conflict, now known simply as Outland. He gathered his supporters quickly and proclaimed himself the Lord of Outland. Illidan was well aware that Kil'jaeden had not forgotten his failure to destroy the Frozen Throne, the Burning Crusade's expansion's manual claims. Illidan started to make extensive preparations for a defensive stand, since he anticipated the Legion's vengeance and was sure that another attack against Azeroth was imminent. Illidan started assembling his own Fel Orc army under the Black Temple using the captive Magtarodon's blood. His supporters fought to keep the portals to Outland firmly locked as he strengthened the temple, giving Illidan more time to expand his power base. Illidan gave Lady Vashj the order to take over command of the water resources of the Broken Realm in order to further establish his rule over Outland and its inhabitants. Vashj's Naga warriors rushed swiftly to start draining Zangar marsh lakes and seas while collecting as much of themselves as they could inside the Coalfang Reservoir. The Coalfang Reservoir was eventually privatized by Illidan's Naga, who kept it under constant protection and at the expense of the marsh's former inhabitants. The Black Temple, formerly known to Akama's people as the Temple of Karabor, was under Illidan's authority, and Akama had grown irritated with Illidan's determination to give it up. Along with his army of Fel Orcs, Illidan had started training a group of individuals who would carry war axes identical to his own and be endowed with demonic abilities. The Illidari would be the name given to this army. Akama started covertly plotting with Maya of Shadowsong to attempt to rescue Outland from Illidan's control, since she thought that Illidan's work with the Fel Orcs, whose kin she had battled against for so long, and the Fel rituals practiced by the Illidari only served to further contaminate the temple. But it didn't take long for Illidan to learn of Akama's treachery. In order to ensure that Akama might still be utilized in the future for Illidan's own reasons, Illidan decided to tie a piece of Akama's soul into his service, rather than murder the treacherous broken warrior. Chapter 7.1. The End of Azgoth. The first conflict between the Illidari and the Legion took place when Illidan led his brand new army of demon hunters in an assault on a demonic realm controlled by the Pit King Azgoth. A night elf by the name of Corvas Bloodthorn approached Illidan as he was assembling his troops for the assault and knelt before him. He then asked openly what distinguished the Illidari, who had demonic energies gnawing at their every thought and had demonic energies coursing through their veins, from the monsters they battled. Illidan chose to keep mute for the time being, as he approached the unsure demon hunter, despite several of her allies criticizing her for asking him questions. Illidan then started rallying the gathered Illidari, telling them that they would not make the same mistakes he believed the people of Azeroth had made. Instead of waiting to become spectators as the Legion washed over one world after another, they would instead go on the offensive, hunting the Legion wherever it lingered before its endless armies had a chance to strike. The open portal was still raging behind him, and time was running out on their assault. The Felguards guarding the demonic citadel were easily avoided as the demon hunters pushed recklessly toward the portal leading to Asgoth's dominion. They continued until they broke through the enormous door leading to Asgoth's chamber. Illidan was hurt by the Pit Lord's massive flail during the subsequent combat with Asgoth. The betrayer was about to be killed by the Annihilon when Corvus sprung forward and shattered the chain of the flail with a warglaive. The newly minted Illidari was taunted by the Annihilon by preying on her worries that she might give in to the demonic forces raging within her. The Annihilon stunned her with a powerful backhand and then trapped her up against the wall with his tusks. As Illidan launched himself into the air after recovering from Asgoth's blow and impaled the Pit Lord from behind with the twin blades of Azeroth, instantly killing him, Corvas simply sneered and replied, "Never," holding the Pit Lord's attention. Even if the fight had already done more than enough to provide Corvus with the appropriate answers for her queries, Illidan returned to her afterward and addressed her earlier concerns. "You want to know the distinction between the demons and us? They would do anything to obliterate our planet." To which Corvas replied, "And will do anything to keep it that way." After receiving satisfaction from her response, Illidan collected the Illidari and applauded them as they triumphantly made their way back to the fortress in Outland. Chapter 7.2 The Demise of Nethreza. Mayav would ultimately be duped into leading her soldiers into an ambush at Illidan's orders, with Mayav emerging as a sole survivor. Illidan would open a portal to Nethreza during this invasion using the souls of the dead, including the Ashtongue and Mayav's warriors. Killing Nethreza's guardians, Illidan and his demon hunters broke inside the citadel of the Dreadlords and accessed the archives. Illidan destroyed the remaining records after obtaining that one of them showed where Argus was and then fled back to Outland with his demon hunters. Illidan believed that if his calculations were accurate, the backlash had shattered Nethreza in much the same way that Draenor had been shattered into Outland. Once through the portal, Illidan collapsed its spell work and directed all of its resulting energy, enough to destroy an entire continent, into Nethreza. The demons that died on Nethreza were slaughtered for all time, and it was the biggest defeat the Legion had ever experienced. The Dragon Maw received their promotion from Illidan. All acts, however, had repercussions, and the Legion was now aware of the danger that Illidan represented and would find out from inside the Illidari spies that Illidan intended to mount a similar attack on Argus. The Burning Legion made the decision to assault the Azeroth troops and trick them into invading Outland in order to defeat Illidan. The Horde and Alliance would start attacking the Legion and Illidari as soon as they arrived on the Broken Realm. Kil'jaeden planned to wipe out all of his adversaries after tricking them to engage in combat with one another. Illidan, who had grown progressively more consumed with his desire to eliminate Argus, appeared to have little interest in anything else. But on certain instances, as they vanquished the Crimson Sigil, he would directly interact with the heroes of Azeroth, challenging them and boasting that not even Arthas could stop him. It would appear that Illidan had become increasingly insane, as he would doubt his own sanity, or that he believed defeat to imply death, which would technically make him correct. Illidan frequently uses such subletics of logic to support his conduct in front of others. The heroes of Azeroth would also see Illidan, who would then explain that the purportedly new High Lord of the Dragon Maw had really been a spy who had given the order to kill them. The Nether Dragon stayed among the Illidari and served as one of the defense troops of the Black Temple, despite the fact that Yarzil's deeds would have saved their lives and that they believed Illidan's wraith would put an end to the Dragon Maw. Chapter 7.3 Master of the Black Temple. Illidan had lost all interest in maintaining control of Outland since he was preoccupied with his task to plan the assassination of Argus. This mindset wouldn't alter until the night before the Black Temple was destroyed, when Illidan watched the progression of the conflict and realized right away that this confrontation of the Legion's adversaries was what Kil'jaeden had foreseen. The Betrayer, who was recently resolute to win this fight and complete his own personal strike at the Legion's core, ordered the Illidari Council to retire and get ready for combat. But Illidan was still concentrating on his main objective. With the adventurers pursuing him, he understood that he had not enough time to create the link to Argus and that he would have to redirect his attention. In order to do this, he sent a group of his most illustrious and potent demon hunters to the planet Mardum in pursuit of the Sargerite Keystone, a piece of equipment that had the ability to open portals to an infinite number of demon planets, including Argus itself. Illidan would eventually notice the Shattered leader Akama's absence during his period. Unbeknownst to Illidan, Akama had been assisting the Azeroth heroes and had, on the eve of the war, liberated Mai of Shadowsong, one of Illidan's former adversaries. Then, with their united troops and prominent characters like Camrathod Abendok, they would attack the Black Temple. This attack was meant to create a distraction so that a number of champions, including Akama and his Ashtongue Deathworn, could sneak in, take control of the temple, and finally face off against the betrayer. Although Illidan quickly gained the upper hand over the assembled adventurers, Maiev makes her move during the conflict, freeing the adventurers just as one of Illidan's spells had imprisoned them, and joining in as the conflict continues. She mentions the suffering Illidan has brought her on multiple occasions, from making her guard his jail for 10,000 years by committing his crimes to cause Naish's death. Finally, when Illidan lies on the verge of death, Maiev hotly declares, "He is beaten." But Illidan tells her as he passes away that the Huntress is nothing without the hunt. Illidan relived his memories of Kurthal's Ravencrest horror at his sacrifice of the Moonguard for power, and the scenario's explanation to him of the necessity of sacrifice for the Druid's path, which Illidan could not comprehend. Chironda, whose name Illidan says as the light in his eyes fades, is the last thing he sees. In order to make Illidan's immortal demon soul endure the remainder of his punishment for all eternity, Maiev directed that his body to be transported to the vault of the Wardens on the Broken Isles. The Illidari who had been sent to Mardum to recover the Sargerite Keystone succeeded in their job, and they returned through a portal as the Wardens were getting ready to take his body. When the demon hunters learned of their master's demise, they launched an assault, slicing through the momentarily confused Wardens, until Maiev was able to render them helpless and jail them by using the exact power they relied on against them. The Illidari were sent to the vault on Maiev's command, where she intended to keep them imprisoned for all time. After defeating Illidan, Akama took control of the Black Temple and vowed to restore light to its inside. Chapter 8 Wrath of the Lich King. In the quest, The Hunter and the Prince, a reconstruction of the combat between Illidan and Arthas Menethil at the Icecrown Citadel gates included a vision of Illidan. In the Trial of the Champions, Argent Confessor Palatrus might call upon a memory of Illidan. Chapter 9 Cataclysm. Adventurers may relive Illidan's conversation with Arthas, the time he received the Skull of Gul'dan, and eventually his fight with Tychondrius, where they would aid him in defeating a Dreadlord in Felwood. He appeared in the Well of Eternity dungeon while traveling through the Caverns of Time, helping heroes in their conflict with Manaroth and Varathan. Chapter 10 Revelations of the Past. It was discovered that Illidan has access to an untapped reserve of raw arcane energy in the Shrine of Lost Souls in the scenario Pursuing the Black Harvest. He was able to tie countless demons to his service by promising them that they could quench their desire for magic from that realm instead of Fel in return for their devotion because of the immense arcane power he had. He was able to release several demons from their Fel magic addiction and win the support of numerous demons in this way. According to Camrathod Abendok, Illidan wanted to offer the Blood Elves this source of power in order to help them break their addiction, much as he had done with the demons. But for some reason, maybe being aware of Kael'thas's treachery, Illidan never allowed them to go close to it. Chapter 11 Legion. Following the destruction of the Black Temple, Warden Mai of Shadowsong sent Illidan's body to the Vault of the Wardens so that his evil, lingering spirit might serve out the remainder of his everlasting sentence with his fearsome Illidari followers. Illidan was crucial to the Legion's victory over Azeroth, and Cardana Felsong guided the Gul'dan from an alternate reality to the Vault of the Wardens, where his body was being held. Even though Maiev and several of Illidan's demon hunters who had been released from prison confronted them, Cardana and Gul'dan managed to flee with Illidan's corpse. In Blackrock Hold, Gul'dan performed a ritual to remove Illidan's spirit from his body after bringing his body there. The Twisting Nether was then opened up for Illidan's soul to enter. Illidan is sought after by the Prime Naru Zera, who regards him as a child of light and shadow, tasked with putting an end to the demon era. Illidan explained that Akama knew about his intentions to fight the Burning Legion and gave the surviving Illidari on board the Fellhammer the mission to persuading him to join their cause in locating the Sargerite Keystone from wherever the Wardens had hidden it. Illidan proclaimed that the Illidari would not be able to reach him in this way and designated the demon hunter adventurer as their new leader before running from his pursuers. Zera and the Illidari intended to return Illidan's soul to his body before it was too late, since Gul'dan intended to utilize Illidan's body as a container for Sargeras' spirit. Allari, the Soul Leader, created the Soul Prison to keep Illidan's soul safe long enough for him to be placed within Light's heart. Illidan's soul, however, had been taken from the Nether and dragged into Helheim. Gul'dan had made a bargain with Helya to bring it back and keep it there. After Helya passed away, his soul was placed in the Soul Prison and sent to Light's heart, where it seemed to be devoured. When Gul'dan attempts to open the gateway for Sargeras in order to release Illidan's soul into his body, Light's heart, which contains Illidan's soul inside, will attempt to summon the power of the vessel. This information was sent to Archmage Khadgar. Khadgar makes an effort to follow instructions while in the Nighthold. Khadgar is unaware that Sargeras had already filled Illidan's empty shell, which causes Illidan to awaken. Then the explorers engage the demon within combat. After Sargeras is vanquished, Illidan seizes control of his body and executes Gul'dan in the same manner that Varian Bryn was slain by Gul'dan, by tearing him apart with fell energy until nothing but his skull is left. Then, after crushing it with his palm, he turns to face the gathering combatants and orders them to follow him into the depths of the pit, now that they are aware of what awaits them. Chapter 11.1 Legionfall. The second fight at the Broken Shore is delayed by Illidan's arrival, which causes Maiev to complain that her wardens are doing all the work while his demon hunters are playing with their fell bats until Prophet Velen instructs them both to stop squabbling. Together, Illidan and Maiev ascend the Cathedral of Eternal Night's tower to utilize the Aegis of Agromar there. They argue all throughout the dungeon and Illidan helps to kill Mephistroth. An echo of Aegwin, the guardian of Tirisfal who built the Tomb of Sargeras, comes when Mephistroth is vanquished and the Aegis is activated. It explains that Aegwin put the echo there in case the wards on the tomb failed. She reveals that the Eye of Aman'Thul can extinguish the Fellstorm and that the Pillars of Creation can restore her wards. Few people understood Illidan's use of the Naga to get the Eye of Sargeras, but it was a vital strategy to ensure the future of Azeroth, he says in the tomb himself. Khadgar tells his mentor's mother, a projection of her, that they will locate Kil'jaeden and foil his schemes, and this time they won't fall short as the Class Order Hall leaders make their way to the main floor of the ruins. Illidan acknowledged that it was a bold assertion but said that winning calls for more than just bravery. Illidan explained that although both the Alliance and the Horde armies displayed bravery at various points during the Battle of the Broken Shore, their armies ultimately suffered terrible losses. Illidan forewarned that the Deceiver would play on everyone's anxieties and doubts to his own advantage. Illidan, Khadgar and Velen fought Kil'jaeden as the heroes fought the fallen Avatar. Khadgar attempted to stop Velen as he pursued Kil'jaeden through his portal as he fled to the Legion ship. Illidan applauds Velen's initiative and informs Archmage Khadgar that attempting to seal the portal on their own would be pointless. The Legion would eventually make as many attempts to return as they could, even if it took years or even millennia. Since killing a demon required using the Twisting Nether, they must take advantage of this chance to accept their fate and utilize the gateway doing so. The Deceiver will go down with them if they fail. Kil'jaeden died, and his spacecraft started to crash on Argus. Khadgar was able to transfer them securely to Azuna when Illidan used the Sargera keystone to create a gap between Argus and Azeroth. However, upon their arrival back in Azeroth, it was discovered that Illidan had left the rift leading from Azeroth to Argus open, and Argus appeared in the sky above Azeroth. Khadgar was shocked and questioned Illidan what he had done. Illidan said that sometimes one must push fate. He also led Class Order champions in defending the Broken Isles against the Legion assaults. Chapter 11.2 Argus. To board the Vindikar, a brand new dimensional vessel the Draenei developed to sail to Argus, Illidan went to the Exodar on the Zurmist Isle. Once there, Illidan questioned Velen in private about his lack of action while allowing Archimonde and Kil'jaeden to become corrupted by Sargeras and the Legion, as well as his belief that what he has done by the Light wanted while Argus was being taken. Velen yelled that Illidan would never comprehend what he had done to save his people when the latter told him that the blood of his people was on his hands. Illidan responded that the Light was holding Velen back and advised him to choose his own path. Grand Artificer Rumul came at this time and informed Velen that the Vindikar was prepared to travel to Argus. Illidan initially disregarded the army of the Light after arriving above Krokun because they were nowhere to be seen. Soon after the Vindikar arrived, the Xenadar emerged, but was swiftly destroyed by the Burning Legion, and Azeroth's armies reassembled to start the decisive struggle for Argus. Illidan gave assistance in taking out the Antean Lightbreaker that had killed the Xenadar. during the initial assault on Argus and cautioned Velen about his allegiances of the local Broken. After being restored by Turalyon, Alleria Windrunner, and an adventurer, Zara tried to carry out the purpose for Illidan that she had sought through the light. But Illidan rejected her. Illidan admitted that he had previously exchanged his freedom for power. Illidan was tied in chains of light by Zara in order to make the prophecy come true and give him a new life as the two engaged in a dispute about whether or not Illidan should embrace the light and whether or not his destiny was his own. Finally breaking free and declaring his fate to be his own, Illidan killed Zara after claiming that it was not her place to take his life. Turalyon was horrified and tried to kill Illidan with the great royal sword while screaming that he had betrayed them all and calling him a betrayer. Turalyon's punch was deflected by Illidan, who said that only they could rescue themselves as fell blood trickled down his arms after blocking Turalyon's blow with his palm. North of the Army of the Light's camp at Hope's Landing in the Antoran Wastes, Illidan and the Illidari established a base in the Veiled Den. Turalyon questioned Illidan about the situation, and he said that a frontal attack on Antaurus, the Burning Throne, would be foolish given the Legion's size and unusual speed which they had replaced fallen demons. Some of them were even powerful enough to somehow slow him down. He needed a fresh strategy to breach the Citadel, and in the meanwhile he had a sea of demons to fight. Sargeras left his animals to play within Antaurus. The heroes were instructed to kill them by Illidan, since they are one of many more demons who will perish at their hands. He claims that unless we destroy their war machines, attacking the Legion's core would be ineffective once we get to the Broken Cliffs. If left unchecked, they will eventually devastate us. Illidan observes that the Legion is nearing its end after murdering Kingaroth, and then he instructs the heroes to return to the Vinikar so that he might enter Antaurus' heart. The Coven of Shivara are torturing the Pantheon in the heart of the Legion's fortress, excluding Eonar and Agrimar. Magni senses how the demons are bending their souls and compelling them to utilize their might in the Legion's service. Illidan claims that if they experience darkness, Sargeras will have the strength enough to seize control of the last Titan, Azeroth. Illidan warns everyone, even Magni, that our triumphs are meaningless when Agrimar is vanquished and his soul is returned to the rest of his kin. Azeroth is still in serious danger as long as Sargeras holds Argus' soul to feed his endless army. The heroes of Azeroth return to their homes following the destruction of Argus, the Unmaker, as the Pantheon gets ready to imprison Sargeras. However, Illidan stays still at the Pantheon's seat, claiming that the Hunter is nothing without the hunt. The Pantheon takes Sargeras back and imprisons him at the seat, appointing Illidan as his jailer. This occurs as Sargeras manages to hit Azeroth and Silithus, seriously wounding her. Chapter 11.3 Reflective Moments. Illidan made a crystal containing messages for Malfurion, Tyrande, and the Traveler before he went for Antaurus. The crystal was discovered on board of the Vindikar following the events at the seat of the Pantheon and was given to its receivers. In spite of Malfurion's mistrust, he explained to him that the teaching of Cenarius were not for him as they were for his brother, and that the only power he desired was to rescue Azeroth, despite the fact that Illidan conceded he did not make it simple for Malfurion to do so. Illidan wanted to put an end to their long-standing disagreement and give his brother responsibility for the world's security, now that his fate was known. He trusted his brother more than anybody to deal with the dangers. Malfurion had spent a career defending the ideal of what Azeroth may be, but now he must defend the reality of the realm. Illidan's final request to Malfurion was to look after Tyrande and pay attention to her advice, because she was always the best among them. He knew Malfurion would uphold the name Stormrage, despite the difficult journey that lay ahead. He explained to Tyrande that all of his decisions had been made with the goal of rescuing the planet in mind. He was unable to make any concessions or half measures. He explained to her how he always relied on her as an anchor whenever he was in doubt. With her faith and dedication, Tyrande, he said, epitomized the grace of Azeroth. He then asked Tyrande to look after Malfurion. Even if he occasionally wished her heart had made a different decision, he knew she made the correct decision in the end. Illidan informed the Traveler that they had demonstrated their loyalty to Azeroth, that their sacrifice and perseverance surpassed his own, while standing atop Mount Hyjal on the beaches of the Well of Eternity he had built years before. The defense of the planet lay with them as foes gathered and the shadows grew deeper. Chapter 12 Illidan and Malfurion's Relationship. The Stormrage brothers' relationship in Warcraft 3, The Frozen Throne and the War of the Ancient Trilogy is noticeably different. In contrast, Malfurion is more understanding and forgiving of his brother in the books written by Knock, who is frequently portrayed as being self-centered, irresponsible, out of control, and not entirely sane. Malfurion speaks on Illidan's behalf, endorsing his knowledge of the Burning Legion's crucial tactical information, giving an undeniable reason to bury Illidan rather than kill him, rather than joining the lynch mob who wanted him executed without delay. In Warcraft 3, when Malfurion and Illidan first appeared, Malfurion vehemently opposed Illidan's release because he thought Illidan's crimes were beyond forgiveness and that he should remain imprisoned. When they were reunited, Illidan was resentful of the punishment he had received, and Malfurion was repulsed to be in the same space as Illidan because of Illidan's betrayal. Illidan, who at the time appeared to be a more forgiving one, was eager to show his brother that he was free of the demon's influence. Malfurion later demanded to know where his brother was, indicating that he still had some affection for him. After Illidan uses the Skull of Gul'dan's abilities for himself and assumed a demonic appearance, Malfurion simply banished Illidan after he confessed to being the demon rather than killing him. Clearly aware that Maya of Shadowsong would prefer to have Illidan imprisoned, Malfurion decided to do nothing. Illidan didn't say anything, just walked away. The next time we saw Illidan was in Warcraft 3 The Frozen Throne. Illidan seems to have forgave Malfurion for interfering with his plans to overthrow the Frozen Throne, even if doing so would put him at Kil'jaeden's mercy after the two came together to save Tyrande. In his final remarks to Illidan, Malfurion made a menacing threat regarding what would happen to him if he ever did anything to harm the Kaldorei. Illidan accepted this as well without hesitation. Illidan acknowledged that he had ever only known years of hate for his brother, but he wanted it to be over. The brothers may have come closest to achieving peace with this. After that, Illidan left, telling Malfurion that he did not think he would ever see each other again. Malfurion states in World of Warcraft that he's not one to battle his brother, and that if he is, things won't turn out the same way they did at the well at Zinajari. Malfurion is said to be saddened by Illidan's passing in Outland in Seeds of Faith. And in the present situation, Malfurion and Remulos had the following conversation. Cenarius fights by my side, declares Malfurion Stormrage. In Outland, Illidan is seated on his throne, melancholy. I'm worried that his breaking point was the defeat against Arthas. He had been embraced by madness, Remulos. Every day he goes over the events in his head 1,000 times, but each time he comes out on top and Arthas is completely vanquished. Old buddy, he has gone too far. I wonder that our relationship will be put to the test, and it won't be as that it was at the well is Zinajari. This precise significance and ramifications are unknown. However, it's probable that Malfurion worries that his brother Illidan's ties will soon be put to the test. The two brothers were obliged to cooperate during the War of the Ancient 10,000 years ago, and it was during the Sundering that they decided to go their own ways. And that is the complete story of Illidan Stormrage. Thank you for listening, and I will see you next time.